viewers, today I am once again with you on issues of Indian foreign policy and national security. I hope you like it. Today I am going to discuss with you the attributes of main traits of Indian foreign policy under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has been in power since 2014 and has been commanding the Indian foreign policy, directing it, helming it personally. Modi, when Prime Minister Modi arrived at a time when India's global profile was rising as its economy was growing, which was the cumulative result of policies of both Congress as well as non-Congress governments that had more or less adhered to the broad principles of constitution and its enshrined values of equal opportunities and equal rights for all citizens irrespective of the religion, caste, creed or belief. Popular expectations at that point of time with the new regime under Modi were that the new government would follow more or less the same path. But if we take a close look at the concrete and measurable achievements today, seem to strongly indicate that those expectations have been belied and promises have remained partially or partly achieved or unfulfilled, rather unrealized. Now, there is a consensus among foreign policy, international affairs experts that there is a close linkage between domestic realities, aspirations, constraints, and the working of the external policy. There is no confusion on that. Prime Minister Modi, on the other hand, from the day he assumed power, he showed that he would like to tread the path of country's first foreign minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, and his foreign policy. And he took over the external affairs ministry literally. Though, for the namesake, we had external affairs ministers like Sushma Swaraj or today S. Shankar. Now, fact is that Prime Minister Modi is enchanted with the world affairs. He's attracted. But for the conduct of foreign policy, you need to have an expertise or understanding of global history, affairs, or you allow a foreign minister to conduct the foreign policy, giving broad guidelines or intervening at a crucial moment. Such, for example, if your foreign minister has committed something and you want to withdraw it, you can always say, no, he said something wrong. But Modi ji thought otherwise. Now there are reasons. Modi ji, even before becoming the Prime Minister of the country, he had interest in international affairs, in the affairs of the world. He had toured, visited Israel, China, and other countries as the chief minister. Even as a office bearer of the National Party, in 1993, he had visited America at the invitation of the ACYPL. What is ACYPL? The American Council of Young Political Leaders, established in 1966 with the backing of the Department of State in the US. Though its funding today comes from different sources, from private sector, from multinationals and all that. But experts say that even the CIA has an interest in this program. They identify leaders, develop relations over the years, and when the time comes, they use them. Anyway, I am giving this as a general information. Our Prime Minister Narendra Modi is an alumni of this program. During that time, from July 10 to 23, he was the official guest of the ACYPL, during which he had interacted with senators, Democrats, both Republicans, officials, US officials, and all that. He was taken to different NASA and all that institutions, to, to health system and all that. Anyway, Modi ji has, as I said, a penchant for world affairs. So when he came to power, he showed a promise. He was in a hurry. He was convinced that he would be able to improve relations with our neighbors, including Pakistan. He would be able to develop relations with the world leaders, US presidents, German chancellors, um, British prime minister, and so on and so on. He was convinced. He thought that by being over friendly with the leaders, like, he hugs them, he laughs loud at them, with them, and all that. He thinks, I think he's convinced that he is a, he has such a personality that he can develop relations with the leaders, and with the leaders he can develop relations, and relations with the country will automatically improve. No, you know that such a such an approach, I mean, as it is very obvious to you by now, uh, that Modi ji has a Prime Minister Modi has a liking for good things in life. He loves attiring himself in quality clothes. He loves using the best cars in the world. He loves to travel in a in an aeroplane which is similar to the US president, an element of show off somewhere. Now, imagine what you say. Modi's plays up personal equations with world leaders. It was so obvious. When in 2019, Our Prime Minister Modi's friend Donald Trump was seeking re-election. He on the US, Modi ji on US soil campaigned for him and said, "Ab ki baar Trump sarkar." This time, Trump comment. Now, this is normally not done. I mean, imagine our former president Pranab Mukherjee, who was very, very well versed in international affairs. He had been the Minister of External Affairs. In his memoir, he comments on Prime Minister Modi's this trait. He says, "I totally oppose the expression of personal friendships because friendships are between two countries, not between two leaders." He had Modi had called Prime Minister of Japan Abe as the most dependable friend. Now, Pranab Mukherjee wrote that I do not subscribe to the belief that such special relationships or friendships have any worth when it comes to international relationships, where every relationship is impersonal. Now, imagine that this habit which our Prime Minister has had a negative consequence because the other leader whom you are meeting will praise you, thinking that this man can get can be taken or lied. Anyway, second trait which Modi's foreign policy displays is use of muscle power or force, which has been particularly used in the neighborhood, though in Canada it was also used. Now listen, use of force is not banned, but it is selectively used. It is used when you are economically powerful. You may be world's fourth largest economy, but on what? You have problem of poverty, you have problem of unemployment, there is resentment within the country. On these factors, you can't afford to use force. I'm only mentioning you a couple of examples. In case of Nepal, instead of sending a political emissary, Prime Minister Modi chose to send the raw chief there. What was he trying to convey? Another factor. Why it is happening? I can share with you as my understanding is that while earlier prime ministers chose their national security advisors, experts from the field of foreign policy, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his wisdom, has appointed his national security advisor in Ajit Doval, who is a former intelligence bureau chief, and for whom security overweighs other uh, challenges of foreign policy. Now, what has happened is today, even in our neighborhood, we are isolated. China's relations with Nepal are growing. With Pakistan, where you stand, just saw that you had to launch an Operation Sindoor. With Sri Lanka, because our Prime Minister Modi ji has tried to push the case of a business tycoon in Sri Lanka, became a factor that impacted our relationship. In Myanmar, same situation. In Bhutan, relations with China are going. Now, in Pakistan, when 2014 Prime Minister Modi came to power, he invited Nawaz Sharif and went on his personal friendship. Nawaz Sharif came here, popular expectations were aroused, but Prime Minister Modi forgot, or rather was not briefed properly in Pakistan. Elected leaderships, elected governments are not that important. They play a second fiddle to the military establishment of Pakistan. It's the army which calls the shots there. Prime Minister Modi should have thought at that point of time. He even stopped on his return from Afghanistan, he stopped in Lahore to greet Nawaz Sharif. What was all that personal uh, equations had to do? In Pakistan, this doesn't go. But Prime Minister Modi wanted to be Jawaharlal Nehru without his knowledge base. That becomes a crisis point. Here, when you control every move of foreign policy from the Prime Minister's office, giving little maneuver room to the Minister of External Affairs, then things are bound to mount up, which happened in the case of Operation Sindoor. Pahalgam was a tragedy. As a response, you went for Operation Sindoor and you stood isolated. Even with the US, where Prime Minister Modi's dear friend Donald Trump is in power, he suddenly, overnight, became neutral. He put India and Pakistan at the same platform without speaking a word against Pakistan. Trump tried and claims, and he has repeatedly claimed that because of him, a nuclear war between India and Pakistan was averted. It could have. And he takes the credit for ceasefire. Our establishment denies it. Who's wrong and who's right? Difficult to say. But the assertion that Trump makes and silence on the part of Prime Minister Modi. Prime Minister Modi has not spoken once that is that Trump's claims are wrong. He has used our Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri to convey a message in the media and to the media to his constituency that Trump is wrong. But he has himself not done it. Now, as I said, use of muscle power, his personal um, touch to world leaders, and Failure to understand the historical perspective of relations with the country, imagine, brings havoc. In case of China, as you know, China, Modi had visited and he had developed, as they say, an excellent equation with Chinese leadership. But when he became the prime minister in 2014, he visited first Japan. Nothing wrong. The Chinese President Xi Jinping visit to India had been scheduled on 1st of September 2014. Prime Minister Modi was in Japan. While speaking to a business leaders in Tokyo, Prime Minister Modi warned against forces of expansionism and said today's global situation looked more like the 18th century. Today's world was divided into expansionism and developmentalism. He used the word Vistarvad or Vikasvad. He's very good at, you know, illustrating the words, using the words, bringing similes. But words play do not achieve foreign policy objectives. Though the Prime Minister had not named China, but it was clear, even for a layman, to understand to which country Mr. Modi was referring to. He said, China has dispute in sea territories. Modi said, encroaching on a country, entering into sea somewhere, entering into a country, occupying territory, this expansionism cannot do good to the humanity in the 21st century. Modi said without naming China directly. Now, China doesn't react or overreacts. It notes down. Modi, Prime Minister Modi should have known that China has a long memory. So when Xi came to India, Prime Minister Modi thought that by extending him an extraordinary welcome, he will be able to win over Chinese president and the relations with China improve. Now imagine China, which has disputes with Japan, Vietnam, Philippines, and a host of regions in the Pacific region, had noted that point. What Prime Minister had said in Tokyo. Now imagine when Xi came here and Prime Minister Modi took him to even to Ahmedabad. It was on Prime Minister Modi's birthday that happened. That happened, and Prime Minister Modi served him, served Xi, took care of his interest. They swung on his. It was perceived, it was thought that by extending Xi an extraordinary welcome, relations with China improved. But what happened? China did not forget that. China was continuously trying to encircle India, was improving relations with Nepal, improving relations with Bhutan, improving relations with Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and all that. And there was border tension even while Z was here. Border tension was prevailing. Indian and Chinese army had clashed in Chunnar in southern Ladakh, but our Prime Minister Modi was giving a very warm welcome to Z. Now, subsequent national informal summits have taken place at Wuhan and Mahabalipuram. Same warmth was displayed, but relations did not continue, did not improve. Imagine during the COVID 19 pandemic, the People's Liberation PLA, People's Liberation Army of China, occupied the Indian territory on the Indian side, the line of control in the second quarter of 2020. Indian soldiers were killed, but since then we have been trying, we have had numbers of meetings with the Chinese army and foreign ministry officials, but yet things have not come back as it was when Chinese encroachment took place. Today, when you saw during the Operation Sindoor, China was standing behind Pakistan, was helping, and India was friendless. Only two countries had stood with India. One was Israel, other was Afghanistan. China in between has been able to make truce between China and between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Anyway, what is surprising is that when in 2020 Chinese in Chinese intrusions took place, when China occupied land on the Indian side of the line of control, we said we are breaking off relations with TikTok, we are banning TikTok, we'll not do this, we'll not do that. But the bilateral trade went smoothly. There was a slight setback, but then if 2023-24 paid figures say that China had exported to India about $124 billion, while India had exported to China only around $14.5 billion. We are so dependent on China that we can't afford to, you know, by giving knee-jerk reactions. Foreign policy is not conducted. By making world leaders your friends doesn't help much. You have to, first of all, focus on what you call foreign policy is nothing else but promoting national interests. Our national interest is served when we are economically strong, meaning we have jobs, we have social cohesion, we are happy people, But here, the interest of the political party is considered as national interest. And we try to promote. That's happened. Imagine promoting any businessman through official channels is not done. You may like a certain business group. There are ways to help, but if the official establishment begins to push, then it raises serious questions. I have today listed some of the factors, some of the traits like use of muscle, show off, lack of understanding, historical understanding, taking everything in your own hand, allowing little space, rejecting everything which comes from the opposition. All these factors don't help in the conduct of foreign policy. And Prime Minister Modi has embarked on this path in 2014. And today, where does India stand became obvious during the Operation Sindoor, after which we had to send delegations of member of parliament, former external affairs ministers, other senior officials to 32 countries to put our point of view. Our objective was to convey that Pakistan is a terrorist state which sponsors terrorism. But have we succeeded? We have conveyed, yes. On the other hand, Pakistan had also sent similar delegations. When Pakistan talks that India is stopping our water, it creates sympathy. When we say Pakistan sponsors terrorism, they understand. They would like to, they would oppose it at their own level, but it doesn't create sympathy. So we have to think. There's a lot of damage has been done. How will it repair? One doesn't know. Because Prime Minister Modi does not listen to anyone from quarters which he thinks are naturally opposed to him. The opposition party's job is to indicate, to point out at the failure. The government has to listen to them, has to learn a lesson, draw a lesson. But it's not happening. That is why Modi's conduct of foreign policy has, in my understanding, in my assessment, has been a failure, rather a total failure. For today, this much I'll come with other factors, other issues in my next program. So if you have liked it, share it, subscribe it, and comment. Thank you so much.